I'm the Tech Bear, and today we're going to look at a new project that I've created that will allow non-programmers to develop modules for VCV Rack. So you can go from a visual programming environment like this to this and even this. So let's dive into my project and see how we're going to do this. So the first thing you need to do is to come to my GitHub project page, which you can find a link to in the description. And from there, you will see we've got a nice README file here that details all the steps that you need to do. And we're going to go through those now to give you a few tips and things. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is actually to come to the setting up our development environment. So we click on Set Up Development Environment. The first thing we need to do is to get the VCV Rack build environment set up. And we can do that by clicking on the link here. Now, we're only interested in this first part here, which says setting up your development environment. It's going to install a number of things on your machine. And as you can see, we can do it for Windows, Mac, or Linux. And just follow these up until here. Nothing more than that is required. Once you've done that, we then need to come to the second step, which is to install the ARM toolchain. Now, the very important point here is that we're going to want 12.2 or 12.3. We do not want the latest version, and we want this ending here, which is actually called the bare metal. So we can go to this site here, and you'll see that the first one will be 14, which we're not interested in, but we can come down here to 12.3. And we can see here that we have various different releases for Windows, and you can see it's there for a bare metal target. If we go further down here, we can see for Linux, and we can also then see for Apple Silicon, etc., etc. So we need to download that and install that. Now, importantly here, you will then need to make sure that this is on your path. So make sure you set that up. Okay, once we've done that, that's the hard bit out of the way. We now have to get a copy of my project onto your local machine. Now, the way I recommend you do this is to actually do what we call forking my project. And that means to take a copy of it in the GitHub. The reason we do that is this will really help be able to do things like release and sharing of your plugins later. And it'll also give you a way to back up all of your work. So the way you need to do that, first of all, create a GitHub account, which is free. And then what you're going to want to do is to come up onto my repository here and click on the fork button. Now, I can't do that because I own this repository. But if I go to another repository, I can show you the same thing, which is I click on the fork button, and then this will bring up a panel and it'll say, okay, this is you, and what do you want to call it? Now, I would call it something like my VCV modules or something like that. Now, I'm not going to do that because I don't need to fork that repository. Instead, we'll go back to the setup description again, and we'll go to the next step. So you've now forked that, and now you will basically go to the terminal and clone this into your machine. So I'm going to do what we call a direct clone, which I don't recommend, but I haven't cloned the repository, so we're going to need to do it slightly differently. So what I'm going to do is I keep all of my projects in a directory called projects, and what we're going to do is just copy and paste that line, and I'm going to call it my VCV modules, for example, and that will clone that. Then I will go into that new project, and what I will do is then do the next line. So essentially you'll have just used your name and your repository name and then done the same thing. Then you will be on to this, all right, which basically will get the other projects that we are dependent on, in particular, the MetaModule project. That will take a couple of seconds. Okay, so now we've done that. Now, what you should do is then just cut and paste this line in as well. And this will basically mean that you'll be able to pull updates from my repository. but I don't need to do that because I'm not using that. Okay, the next thing we need is we need the VCV Rack SDK, and we're going to need to place that into this directory somewhere called Rack SDK. So the way we do that, we come to the back to the building VCV Rack page. If we come down a little bit to here, we'll see building rack plugins. And what we're interested in is this part here, which says Rack SDK. And you can see for all the different platforms, we have a link to click. So I'm on Apple Silicon, so I'm going to click on this, and this will download the SDK. That's actually a zip file. And then what I can do from here is literally just unzip that project into here. Okay, if you can alternatively just go to that folder, unzip it, and then move it. As long as you end up with it in this directory, all is good. Okay, once we've done that, we're set up to go. So what we're going to do now is literally just test that we've got everything set up. And so we've got a whole load of scripts. Now these scripts that I've created all need to be run from this project directory. So we're just going to first of all check the setup. And you can see, yep, it's saying that the SDK is fine. It can find the ARM toolchain, etc., etc. So the most likely problem that you're going to have is if you did not put the ARM toolchain onto your path. That is the most likely problem. The fact that we've got no plugin, that's fine. This is just where we're at. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're actually going to create a plugin now, as it tells us to. So we'll create a plugin. Okay, we can call the plugin whatever we want. This is just a shorthand, so I'm just going to call it TechnoBear, and I'll call it TechnoBear as well. It's fine. My name, yeah, TechnoBear. Now, I would actually spend some time thinking about what you want to call this. You can change it later, but it's easy if you get it right now. Now, the first thing to remember is that in VCV Rack and on the MetaModule as well, we have plugins which describes our collection of modules. So at this page, we're creating the whole thing. So this is my RNBO plugins. That's fine. Okay, I'll just call me, then you'll put your name, your email in here, etc. Okay, so now we've got that. Now what we're going to actually do is to just test our setup, and we're going to do that by using a demo script. Now this is basically an RNBO project that's already been created. So at this stage, you don't even need to have Max or RNBO installed. So we will just do that. Okay, that's been done. And now what we're going to do is we're actually now just going to test that we can build it. So it's going to go into sub-modules, VCV modules, and then it's going to build it. And it's built. That's all successful. And then you could actually then, if you wanted to, in this module, you could also then do make install if you wanted to. And at that point, the demo plugin would then become available to you in VCV Rack. Okay, well, we're just testing the environment still. So let's go up a directory. And then what we need to do is we're going to build it for the MetaModule. And it's simply the next command. And you can see this will take time. Oh, we have a problem. Okay, my problem was I didn't set my path. Okay. So I actually forgot, I've got a shortcut which I actually set my path. And you can see that here I needed to set my path up correctly. And I forgot to do that. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing. Okay, a small tip here. We can actually make this go faster by using more of our cores by putting onto the end of here this -J ~J 8. That means to use 8 cores, and then we will build things a lot faster. And now we can see we've actually built it. And actually, if we look in this subdirectory, MetaModule plugins, we can actually see my plugin that I've created. And this you could copy over to your MetaModule and it would work. So that's all cool. Okay, so now we know that this has actually worked and that we're ready to actually create everything. Okay, so now we've done that stage. We can get rid of this demo project as we're done. All right. Subpage development environment. We've tested it. It's all working. Now is when the fun can begin. We can actually create our own modules. So we can go to the creating module section. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do is actually design your patch in Max. Now we're going to use the demo patch, which you will find in the repository as well if you want to try it along. Now this is a simple patch, which is basically a quad attenuator. You can see basically we've got 4 inputs coming in. They get multiplied by a parameter and then they get sent out. So that's good. So we've designed our patch, and as you can see here, I can test it within Max, which is what I'd recommend you do because this is the easiest place to test it. Okay, the next thing we do is we need a plugin for our modules to go into. We actually already did this when we were testing it, but if you wanted to, you could recreate the plugin by using create plugin, but we don't need to do that. We've already done that. Instead, what we're going to do is we need to actually create our module. So again, just copying and pasting scripts. And we have to name a module. So let's call it, I don't know, no, we'll call it demo, why not? And now you can choose what size panel you want it to use, whether you want it to be 10U or 15 or whatever. And we'll say 10U for now. And we then have to give it, again, a unique ID is all it needs to be called as a demo module. But obviously you can use something a little bit more thing. Now you can give it some tags so that if you're using within VCV Rack, you can find it, but you don't have to. Okay, and that's it done. Okay, next thing we need to do, you will see that down here it says it's going to create the module template and also a module RNBO directory. So what we can now do is we can now come to our RNBO patch and we can click on the export function, which is this little button here. And what we need to do is we need to click on the C++ source code export. And we need to go through here as described here. The first thing we're going to need to do is to choose where we want to actually output the file to. So we want to go to projects and we're going into my VCV modules here. I've got a lot of projects. Okay, we then go into VCV modules. We go down into source and we can see this demo that project, which is what we've just created. And we want to click into this directory here. Okay, that's good. We then want to come down here. We want to call it demo.cpp.h. So we just add an H to the end. We need it to be a minimal export. And we do not want to copy the C++ library code. And then finally, the last setting here is we want to change the class name and we want to call it the same thing. So demo, which is what we've been using, and then RNBO. That's it. And then we just click the export button. And we look into here, we'll see that actually we've got a whole load of files. That's good. Notice how it's called demo.cpp.h. That's important. Okay, from here, okay, so now we've exported the RNBO files. We can now do exactly the same process as we did for our previous when we did it with the demo. So we can make the VCV one. We can install that into VCV Rack. You can see this is going into my plugins folder down here, and then we could test it. Well, we should be testing it on VCV Rack. What we can then do is we can then build it for the MetaModule in exactly the same way as we did with the demo project. So we can just do this, and as I said before, if you've got multiple cores, we can just do -j, right, to make it a bit faster. And that's it. Once this is built, as it says here, then you can copy and your plugin file to the MetaModules plugins file. And that's it. It's as simple as that. Now, if you want to change the plugin, it's very, very quick and simple. So for example, if I come down here and I decide that I want to make more of these. So for example, I decide that I want to do a fifth one here. I can just cut and paste this. For example, 5. Okay, so I've changed it. Now we go to here is again, I can just click export again here if I want to, or I can come back to again here. Remember these settings, these all stay the same. And I just click on export, and then I can simply do the same process again. So I can basically do make the VCV Rack one, and then I could do make install and test my changes again, and then I can then build it again. And you'll see that here things become very quick if you're doing it a second time. So again, I'd recommend that you test as much as possible inside Max because it's very quick here. Then obviously you can test your plugin within VCV Rack without it. And then finally, you can move it over to the MetaModule. There are some more advanced techniques that we can get into later. For example, you can actually create your own custom UIs with this. You'll see, obviously, we've got a very generic UI at the moment. But that's for another day. Hopefully, this will get you started quickly. I've been TechnoBear. Come and join me on the MetaModule forum if you want some more information or have any issues getting this going. Bye for now.